Good evening. Thanks for joining us for this very special edition of Real America with Dan Ball, honoring all who've served. Tonight, we're going to be chatting with veterans. Veterans who've seen real combat. They've seen the real true horrors of war. Horrors that most Americans can't even fathom. We'll be discussing how our government and the American people treat our veterans and how they actually should be treated. And of course, we will have to discuss the staggering numbers of veteran suicides related to PTSD. But more than anything, tonight, we'll be paying tribute to the bravest of our nation who've donned that uniform and defended her. In the end, tonight's program is all about saying thank you for your service. So let's get at it. We begin with retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Darin Gaub, a Black Hawk pilot who knows a thing or two about commanding troops in a forward operating zone. Title that not only comes with the pressure of the job at hand, but the knowledge that your orders put other brave heroes in harm's way. It's something that commanding officers have to live with in the war zone and when they come home and transition to civilian life. I want to welcome Darin back to the program for this very special edition of Real America. Darin, first and foremost, as I'm going to do with all the vets, thank you, sir, for your service. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Well, I appreciate you joining us for this one. You know, this is, we've had this show now we started our third year, so this is our third Veterans Day special, and I plan on doing it every single year because, one, let's just start the show this way. Don't you wish that not only Uncle Sam, but most folks in this country would remember to thank our veterans more than one day a year? Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, it seems kind of weird to have a lot of different holidays that seem to grow from one day to a week to a month.
Right.
And Veterans Day, Memorial Day, and these kinds of days stick to one day. And that's fine. We're not complaining as veterans by any means. It's just kind of funny to watch it.
Well, and you know what I've always said, Darin, look, I did 4 in the Air Force. I was a journalist. I did not see combat. And I know when combat vets hear me say this, they're like, but you still served. I don't put myself on that same shelf, that same level as folks who served in those forward zones and ate dirt and, you know, did things most of us, again, cannot fathom. And so for me, I'll complain for the combat vets. I think there should be more than one day. Let's say it, because you're right. We have months for all sorts of things, but we wouldn't have a country if we didn't have our troops. So maybe we need a month for veterans. I don't know. Call me crazy. What do you think?
I'll let the people sort that out for sure. They may agree with you, but in the end, I would say the best thing we can do if we're wanting to honor the veterans and those who serve this nation is to live a life that's worthy of that sacrifice and service, regardless of where we are in the world. And it would be a civilian serving in other capacities where you're sitting, it doesn't matter. There are ways to serve this nation. There are ways to do the things that would honor and support the oath and the sacrifices that we as veterans have already made. And I would also call on the veterans to make sure that they get out there and say that, you know, our oath is perpetual. It doesn't stop. And we're not done serving yet. It's just a different uniform and a different war that we're involved in right now. And it's just a war for liberty for our own country.
Yes, true. I mean, you've been on this program before talking politics. And I said or I'm going to attempt to anyway, Darin, with most of the guests tonight, to stay away from politics. Because I feel like honoring and helping our veterans and getting that suicide number down and giving them the proper training when they come back to transition into civilian life, how is that political? I would hope Democrats and Green and Tea Party and Republic, everybody should be on board with helping our heroes. And I'm so glad that you discussed that, you know, when they come home and the transitioning part and how we have to do more. And that's what I wanted to get into with you. You were an officer. You commanded troops. You had to talk to, I'm sure, higher ups, the big generals and whatnot at the Pentagon, being in charge of a whole Black Hawk. What do you call them in the Army? You weren't in charge of a division. What did you have, a battalion? Sorry, I'm Air Force.
I had a battalion and a brigade. And,
okay.
And
I had to check.
And that's where I stopped, and I was happy there.
A lot of pressure on guys like you. It's not just the boots on the ground, but, you know, you're sending troops in. You got to live with somebody gets hurt. You already got the stress of combat for yourself, and you're going to come home with demons you got to face. But then what if someone got hurt or, God forbid, killed because of your order? Do you think, and now that you're out of uniform, I know you can discuss this, Darin, do you think that Uncle Sam does enough in the way of helping our veterans when they come home, whether they're dealing with the PTSD or trying to deal with transitioning to civilian life? I know where my opinion is. I'd love to hear yours.
I don't think they do. And ultimately, you see billions and billions of dollars leaving our borders and going overseas, while a lot of veterans are still suffering from a lot of different things like you've already mentioned. As someone who works in the volunteer arena for veterans who suffer from PTSD or drug addiction and various things that need counseling, unfortunately, a lot of veterans, and by the way, to include myself, we end up paying for a lot of our own health care and other things that were brought into our lives as a result of our service. We do it because we have to, and sometimes we end up paying for things because we can't wait the 6 to 8 to 9 months that it takes to get through the system for sometimes the most basic of healthcare concerns. Now, I just went through that myself for something I'm dealing with, and I think that's just one of those things that should be constantly brought up to the political class in Washington, D.C. and the VA and anywhere you can. We can't afford to keep doing that because, the oath we give to a nation, we kind of hope the nation is going to provide some of the basic support back to us.
Yeah, you'd hope. You'd think. It's like you've made that sacrifice. So many, I don't even know the numbers. You might know the numbers on how many millions of Americans have served if we go all the way back to the revolutionary, civil, World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq I, and then Iraq, Afghanistan. I probably missed some in the middle. But you add all them up, and you think about the folks that have served. And I don't know if it's because the country changed their mindset on the military because it went so anti-war after Vietnam, but I just don't feel like the country, and now I'm not talking about the government, but its people, enough of them cherish and value what veterans have done, the sacrifice that's been made. And I wish we could have some sort of national movement, if you will, that could create that buzz where more just civilians want to get out there and help. Because let's be real, at the end, Darin, and you, I think that you'll agree with me here, maybe not, it's the nonprofit groups like you're involved in, the churches, the regular old civilian entities that are doing more to help the veterans than our own damn government.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely, and that's okay to an extent because in some ways they're faster and they're more effective by people donating to them, right. And we can get closer to the problem. We need both. We absolutely need both. There's a contract between the government and the veterans that have served this nation. And there's no contract between the civilians and the veterans. That's just an association of people willing to work together. I love being on the nonprofit side, but I recognize that there is a role of government involved in this for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you the final word as I say thank you to you for your service. We've got many more veterans to get to tonight. So thank you for your service. Thank you for always coming on the program discussing important issues that affect our veterans. Your final word to all the vets out there on this Veterans Day.
Well, as a fellow veteran, I'd just like to tell everybody out there, thanks for your service to this country, everything you've given up in order to ensure that liberty is maintained here in this nation. And I will also say that this nation is getting looked at by many nations around the world because of the leadership that we are supposed to provide for freedom and liberty, not just here, but abroad as well. So for the veterans, again, thank you for doing your part, and let's stay in this fight for as long as it takes.
Retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Darin Gaub, thank you, as always, sir, for coming on the program. God bless you. Take care. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Dan. Have a great day.